This is quite an important event. It's a new paper written by Pierre Vimont, one of the scholars of Carnegie Europe. It focuses on migration, but not as general as that, but in fact how is the European Union and all the member states going to work together to deal with the growing refugee and migration issue, which promises to be a very important one, because this migration issue is just not going to go away.
If you look at figures, the inflow is still there. It's maybe not as massive as it was last year, but it's still there. If you look at what's going on with Italy at the moment, where you're still having numbers around 400,000 or maybe even more that have so far landed in Sicily or on the Italian coast. And what is more important, you're still facing, when you're looking at our land borders, a lot of people coming in asking for asylum requests which are more numerous than the ones who have appeared on the coast of Italy or Greece. Secondly, the administrative process is slow, because these things, looking at asylum requests and going through the whole process, takes time. Thirdly, the problems that are at the origin of this migration flow are still there. The Syrian crisis, for instance, is very much there. Yemen, Libya are still hot, intensive crises that we don't know how to solve.
There are 27 million Arabs today that have been displaced from their homes. Not just in Syria. Syria alone is 12 million, 4 of them are outside the country. We're talking about a population that the Arabs in general make 5% of the global population, but yet they are 50% of the global refugee population. And today 1 in 5 refugees globally is Syrian.
As long as the European Union doesn't tackle that and starts dealing proactively and upstream, then I think we'll be facing with policy failure, humanitarian need as a result.
2015 was really a sort of meltdown of political leadership in Europe on those issues. We were unprepared and unable to give the right answer. I think 2016 has seen a lot of improvement actually in the way we look at this crisis and the way we try to find solutions. We're building up our structures. We have this arrangement with Turkey that not everybody likes, but at least gives us some time to organize ourselves and to try to devise more longer-term solutions.
Well, Christine, I mean, I don't know about you, but I think that the political leadership is still in that down phase. And 2016 is probably worse than 2015, given Brexit.
I think what is important is first of all that there's different situations that people are moving from, and that requires a different policy response and different political response. On the other hand, I think what Europe must do, and this is about moral high ground and the influence of Europe in the world, is basically put the human being at the center of its policies, whether it's somebody who's coming from an incredibly corrupted country with bad governance, or whether it's somebody coming from a complex situation.
I'd like to pay tribute to the work of the Commission. They have come out with a lot of very interesting proposals on asylum, on relocation, on resettlement. They have done their homework, and now member states have to deal with this and try to find a way through.
Do you think there is the political will for this to actually happen? Because it does seem that many member states are extremely reluctant to push the Visegrad in that direction.
It is true that Eastern European countries are somewhat hesitant in accepting refugees and migrants. You know, they are contesting the decision on relocation. They're even going to the European Court. So there is a problem there. What I call in my paper a lack of solidarity.
I think there is a more pervasive perception now that there's a lot of hypocrisy. It's a double standards that are being used. We speak human rights, we speak about moral values, we speak about democracy, but when it comes down to it, these things don't necessarily apply to us. And then it's okay to do a deal with Turkey that says we're not going to take any more migrants. Lebanon is a population of 4 million. It's a tiny country and it's taken in 1 million refugees. And yet Europe, 20 countries, has only taken 1 million.
If you look at the Libyan detention centers, then these are one of the most horrible places that we're working. People are being treated like cattle. They don't have any privacy. They don't have any medical care. So these are hopeless, despairing places where it's very difficult for our teams to work.
Have we reached the lowest point? Christine seemed to suggest that it's getting better. 2017 we'll see elections in important countries. And we've seen Viktor Orban's suggestion of creating a refugee city in Libya. So where does this all lead?
This year we will be reaching by the end of 2016 something like half of the numbers of migrants we had last year. It's work in progress, but still it's a high number of migrants stepping in. And I think as we go along, we have to find an orderly way of getting these people inside Europe through legal and safe ways and do it in a dignified way.
I think it was very interesting to hear different contributions, especially from different points of view, because I think that the speakers were very balanced. We managed to hear a lot about solidarity, a lot about different policy options that could be used to address the migration crisis, but also it was interesting to hear about the cost of this crisis and the human rights also issue that is related to migration nowadays.
Essentially, what is needed, just reading Pierre Vimont's paper, is much closer cooperation, collaboration, understanding of the threats that Europeans face, but also the threats and the challenges that the countries in Africa as well, Central Africa particularly, and the Sahel face. This is a long-term goal, but it's a long-term challenge, and we haven't even begun to address it, frankly.